Welcome to Shujin Academy VGM Club. I'm Professor Tom, your faculty sponsor. Today's opening track is Insert Name Screen from Tecmo Pro Wrestling for the NES, composed by some combination of Keiji Yamagishi, Mayuko Okamura, Hiroshi Miyazaki, and Mitsuhito Tanaka. And for today's episode of the show, we're once again visited by galactic rogue Rando Calrissian with a big grab bag of songs that don't really have any common theme. I've mentioned before that I've got a document full of songs that I want to play on the show at some point. Many of the songs on that list are assigned to specific themes, but some of them aren't, and to get today's playlist, I literally used a random number generator to pick some of my orphan tracks, and then I put them in order, and now we've got ourselves a fun little episode. Our first music segment starts off with Act 1-2, The Shrine, from Arcus Odyssey for the Sega Genesis, composed by Motoi Sakuraba, who'd go on to become the franchise composer for the Star Ocean series, among quite a few other games. I've heard some people complain that Sakuraba's Genesis work has too many hand claps, but there's nary a clap to be heard on this track. It's just a solid action game banger. For the second song, we're heading over to the PC Engine to hear Antiship Battle B, Round 4, Zhanghe, from 1943 Kai, composed by Harumi Fujita. This game is an entry in Capcom's 1940X franchise, a series that starts off as a simple overhead shooter that's themed after World War II, and then grows increasingly less grounded as each installment goes on. 1942 and 1943 are both interesting games because they were developed in Japan, but they revolve around an American fighter pilot antagonizing the Japanese Navy en route to attacking Tokyo. Song 3 in our block sees us back on the Genesis with Episode 2, Page 1-1, from Comix Zone, a side-scrolling beat-em-up set in the pages of a comic book. Composer Howard Drossin has not only worked in video games, in addition to the soundtrack for Comix Zone and cult Genesis classic The Ooze, he's also done quite a bit of film work for Spike Lee and the RZA. Speaking of Western composers working on Sega consoles, our fourth song is Pacific Coast from the Sega Master System version of Road Rash, composed by Greg Michael. I really like this soundtrack. It's a propulsive, fun time for a game that's a little more brutal than a typical racer. I don't have a clean seg into the fifth song, but it's Ocean Planet Aquanet second mix from Bomberman 64, The Second Attack. As you may have guessed from the title, this is a Bomberman game for the Nintendo 64, and it was composed by VGM legend Yasunori Mitsuda and also Yoshitaka Hirota. Both these composers worked at Square in the 90s, with Hirota having an in at Square because he was friends with Mitsuda. I don't really need to elaborate on Mitsuda's long and illustrious career, but I do want to mention that this title was Hirota's first credit as a composer, and he went on to be a major music contributor for the Shadow Hearts games and several others. To close out the block, I'll be playing Prologue, Mina's theme, from Castlevania Aria of Sorrow for the Game Boy Advance, composed by Castlevania series mainstay Michiru Yamane. It makes perfect sense to close out a block with a prologue song. I don't feel like that decision needs any explanation at all. Let's hear some songs. Those songs were Act 1-2, The Shrine, from Arcus Odyssey for the Genesis, Antiship Battle B, Round 4, Zhang He, from 1943 Kai for the PC Engine, Episode 2, Page 1-1, from Comix Zone, Pacific Coast from Road Rash for the Sega Master System, Ocean Planet Aquanet Second Mix from Bomberman 64, and finally, Prologue, Mina's theme, from Castlevania Aria of Sorrow. Rolling on down our road of randomness, we're kicking off the second block with Premonition from Lagoon for the Super Nintendo, composed by Go Saito and Masai Sakaide. I am really not sure who these two composers are, as their names don't Google well, but I can tell you that they turned in a really good soundtrack here. On the subject of composers with names that are hard to research, the second song in the second block is It's Urgent Retro Mix from Nonogram Game/Visual Novel Pixel Puzzle Makeout League for the Switch, composed by Capsule King. According to my research online, Capsule King is a pseudonym used by a composer named James MacDonald, but trying to find information about either one of them beyond that doesn't bear much fruit. Anyway, this is a game that combines puzzles like Picross with a visual novel narrative structure that looks like a dating sim and then goes to some weird places, and it's worth checking out if you like good soundtracks, oddball VNs, or nonograms. The third song in our block is from the second game in its series. It's What the Forest Taught Me from Super Nintendo Classic Action RPG Secret of Mana, also known as Seiken Densetsu 2, and composed by Hiroki Kikuta. Fellow VGM podcaster and friend of the show Jameson from Bar Silence did a Patreon exclusive episode a few months ago where he played Secret of Mana Plus, which is Kikuta's arranged version of this game's music that is a single 49-minute track with some interesting experimental flourishes, and that was a cool journey through an iconic soundtrack. The fourth song in our block is from the third game in its series. Or maybe it's the sequel to the third game in its series? It's definitely not the fourth game in its series. Depending on how you count, it could actually be the 8th mainline game in its series. The confusing chronology of which I speak is that of the Street Fighter games, because several of the numbered games have multiple expansions. Anyway, the song is Tomboy African Voice Mix from Street Fighter III Second Impact, composed by Hideki Okugawa and Yuki Iwai. This is a reworking of a song from the original Street Fighter III, and I played that back on episode 47 in the segment I did featuring Yuki Iwai, but I like this drastically reworked version of the track too, so you're going to hear it. We pull our fifth song from another arcade sequel, although this one is from a series with a much simpler set of entries. It'll be Theme from Rolling Thunder 2, Round 1, which is unsurprisingly from the original arcade version of Rolling Thunder 2, and it was composed by Ayako Saso. This is a swanky, secret agent-flavored track which fits well with a game that's about secret agents trying to stop a sinister organization bent on world domination. After doing this game, Miss Saso did quite a bit of work for other Namco games, and work for Erica's games as well. Rolling Thunder 2 had a sequel named Rolling Thunder 3, which was only for the Genesis, and that's a nice way of introducing our next game, which is also for a series where the third numbered installment was a Genesis exclusive after previous games were on various platforms. The song is Ancient Mound, Stage 2A, from Golden Axe 3, a game that was only seen in North America via the Sega Channel. According to Wikipedia, this game didn't get a widespread release in the Western market because it wasn't very good, although the soundtrack from Naofumi Hataya, Tatsuyuki Maeda, and Haruyo Oguro is definitely worth your time. To paraphrase from The Great Dusty Roads, I've filibustered enough here, so it's time for some music, Daddy. Those songs were Premonition from the Super Nintendo version of Lagoon, It's Urgent Retro Mix from Pixel Puzzle Makeout League, What the Forest Taught Me from Secret of Mana, Tomboy African Voice Mix from Street Fighter III Second Impact, Theme from Rolling Thunder 2 from the arcade version of Rolling Thunder 2, and Ancient Mound Stage 2A from Golden Axe 3. It's time for a word from our sponsor.
Billy D. Williams talks about the power of Colt 45.
You know, I've always heard about the power of Colt 45, but I was never sure exactly what that meant, so I got some, found out for myself.
Hey, Billy, you free tonight?
Works every time. The power of Colt 45. It works every time.
Now, back to the show. I'm going to start off the third block with Labyrinth of Lights from multi-platform title World of Final Fantasy, a soundtrack that's been featured on the show multiple times because it's really good. For this game, composer Masashi Hamauzu contributed multiple original songs, including this one, and he also reworked several Nobuo Uematsu tracks from classic Final Fantasy games into interesting new arrangements. After that, we're headed to your Windows personal computer for a song from Civilization 3. The song is called Stars, and it was written by Mark Cromer, who composed for quite a few PC games, and who also does original music. I really like this track. It's contemplative and calm, and it reminds me of some of the music Sting made in the 90s. I also really like Civilization. The original Civ game got me into PC gaming, and I'm really looking forward to the impending release of Civilization 7, which will probably cause me to take a sabbatical from life to spend hours conquering the world. Transitioning from the span of human history into the future, we'll be hearing a song from the Nintendo 64 port of San Francisco Rush 2049. The original arcade release of this game featured a big subwoofer built into the cockpit cabinet, and when it came time to port it for the home market, it quickly became apparent that the music that had sounded so good in the arcade would not work at all on a home television. Composer Barry Leach took on the challenge and wrote an entirely new slate of songs, and they turned out quite well. As you may imagine, this is a game that's set in the future, and I'll have more to say about the future in the future. Is that a cryptic hint about the topic of my next episode? Signs point to yes! I've mentioned before that I was a Kickstarter backer for Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, producer Koji Igarashi's spiritual successor to his work on the Castlevania franchise. Ritual of the Night featured an excellent soundtrack, and for the penultimate song in this block, it'll be Silent Howling 8-Bit from composer Keisuke Ito. You may be familiar with Ito's work from his contributions to the Pokemon Mystery Dungeon series, as those soundtracks have been featured on the show several times before. Finally, we'll end the block with In Game 3 from futuristic TurboGrafx-16 game Moto Rotor 2, composed by someone known only as Opus. I am not quite sure how I found the soundtracks for the Moto Rotor series, but I vaguely remember that fellow VGM podcast CRT Sound System was involved somehow. I probably heard hosts Tom and Reese, or maybe one of their guests, bring it up on an episode they did. No matter how I came to find them, I like the soundtracks for Moto Rotor and its sequel, which are a great set of peppy racing tunes for the TurboGrafx HUC 6280 sound chip. Moto Rotor MC, which is the TurboGrafx CD entry in the series, also has a good Red Book audio soundtrack, so give all those a listen and let me know what you think on socialist media. Music time is go! Those songs were Labyrinth of Lights from World of Final Fantasy, Stars from Civilization 3, Title from the Nintendo 64 version of San Francisco Rush 2049, Silent Howling 8-bit from Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, and finally, In-Game 3 from Moto Rotor 2. That's the show! If you want to reach me, I'm most active on Blue Sky as shujinacademy.bsky.social. You can also find me on Threads, Tumblr, or Instagram as Shujin Academy VGM Club. I'm on Mastodon at Shujin Academy VGM Club at mastodon.coffee, and my username on Discord is Professor Tom. All episodes of the show are posted to my YouTube channel, which you can find by searching for Shujin Academy VGM Club. You can email me at shujinacademyvgmclub@gmail.com. Links to everything are available on my Linktree at linktr.ee/shujinacademy. Please leave me a 5-star rating on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you're finding this episode. New episodes are released once or twice a month, depending on how often I get them done, and they premiere on Thursday mornings on your favorite podcatcher and on 8beats.co, the internet's #1 game music radio station. My show is also featured on TerraPlayer, the cool app that's a destination for gaming podcasts and other content, so you can check me out there. If you're listening on Spotify, please be aware that they've pulled a few of my episodes before. There's a non-zero chance that they'll eventually pull my entire podcast, as they've done with a few other game music podcasts, so I'd strongly suggest you subscribe elsewhere to be sure you can get all the Professor Tom goodness you crave. Special thanks for this episode goes out to fellow VGM podcaster Jameson of Bar Silence Podcast for contributing cover art. You can and should find Bar Silence wherever you download podcasts, and check out his website at barsilence.com. I've got one more song to play us out, and it's Competition Menu from Sonic the Hedgehog 3 for the Genesis, composed by Brad Buxer and pop music legend Michael Jackson. The third Sonic movie came out a few weeks ago, so it seems fitting that I should feature something from the franchise on my show. Thanks for listening. I'm Professor Tom, and I'll see you next time on Shujin Academy VGM Club.